They smiled like mothers, looked like wives, lived among neighbors. But behind their soft eyes lurked something monstrous. These aren't just killers. They're the most evil women caged behind bars, and the blood on their hands tells stories the world will never forget. Juana Barraza, the little old lady killer. Behind the mask of a lucha libre wrestler lived one of Mexico's most feared serial killers. Her name, Juana Barraza. Her victims, helpless elderly women who trusted her enough to unlock their doors, only to be met with brutality. By day, Barraza was known in the ring as La Dama del Silencio, the Silent Lady. But outside the spotlight, she prowled the streets of Mexico City with a deadlier purpose. Authorities would later give her a chilling nickname, La Mataviejitas, the little old lady killer. Barraza didn't strike in a frenzy. She was calculated and calm. She targeted women over the age of 60, especially those who lived alone. Barraza would pose as a government social worker offering help, tricking her way into their homes. Then she'd bludgeon or strangle them to death, robbing them before disappearing into the chaos of the city. The first murder attributed to her dates back to 2003, but rumors suggest her killing spree began years earlier. The media ran wild, the public panicked, and the police? They fumbled, denying for years that a serial killer was on the loose. Victim after victim was found lifeless, and a disturbing pattern began to emerge. A strange coincidence haunted detectives. Many of the victims had a copy of a painting, Boy in a Red Waistcoat, hanging in their homes. Was it a calling card, or just another bizarre twist in an already deranged tale? By late 2005, pressure mounted. Desperate for leads, police raided transgender communities thinking the killer was a man in disguise. But the real predator had been hiding in plain sight all along. Then came January 25th, 2006. 82-year-old Ana Maria de los Reyes Alfaro was found strangled with a stethoscope. But this time, witnesses had seen someone fleeing the scene. That someone was Juana Barraza. When police caught her, she wasn't just carrying a stethoscope. She had pension forms, fake credentials, and everything needed to impersonate a welfare worker. Her fingerprints linked her to at least 10 of the murders. She confessed to 4, including Alfaro's. When asked why she did it, Barraza spoke of her hatred for her own mother, who had once given her away to a man who abused her. In her twisted mind, every elderly woman she murdered was a stand-in for the mother she despised. In 2008, she was convicted of 16 counts of murder and aggravated burglary. Her sentence would be set to 759 years in prison, though under Mexican law she'll serve a maximum of 60 years. It's a life term, and she'll never leave prison walls again. But the story doesn't end there. Inside prison, Juana Barraza reinvented herself again. She became a gym instructor, sold tacos, and even got married and divorced, all behind bars. Some call her a monster, others call her a tragedy. But one thing is certain, Juana Barraza wasn't just a killer. She wore a mask of trust, and beneath that mask was a monster hiding her deadly hatred. Nanny Doss, the giggling granny. She wore a sweet smile, laughed often, read romance novels and baked pies. But behind that grandmotherly charm, Nanny Doss was hiding something unthinkable. Born in 1905, Nanny's life began like many others in rural America. By the time she was arrested in 1954, she had left a trail of dead husbands, children, and relatives behind her, and a smile on her face. They called her the Giggling Granny, the Lonely Hearts Killer, the Black Widow, names that sound almost comical until you realize what they hide. Cold-blooded murder cloaked in laughter. Her first marriage was to Charlie Braggs at just 16. The two had 4 daughters, but the relationship quickly soured. Nanny drank, smoked, and grew bitter. In 1927, 2 of their young girls died from what was believed to be food poisoning. Suspicious, but no one questioned the grieving mother. But Braggs did. He took their oldest daughter and ran, fearing his wife. He later claimed he left not because of the fights, but because he was terrified of her. Nanny didn't stop there. Her second husband, Robert Harrelson, came into her life in 1929. For 16 years, she played the dutiful wife, but when he essayed her in 1945, she didn't call the police. She poisoned his whiskey. By nightfall, he was dead. She moved on. Husband number 3 was Arlie Lanning, another drunk she met through a Lonely Hearts column. They were married within days. He died soon after. Locals believed it was heart failure, but they were wrong. Right after the funeral, the house burned down. Nanny pocketed the insurance money and moved on again. She showed up at her sister Dovie's house, who just happened to be bedridden. Days later, Dovie was dead too. Wherever Nanny went, death followed. Her 4th husband, Richard Morton, was poisoned not long after her mother mysteriously died in the same house. And when Nanny married Samuel Doss, a quiet minister who disliked her romantic fantasies, she wasted no time. She poisoned him with arsenic and rushed to claim his life insurance. But this time, she slipped up. The doctor was suspicious. An autopsy was ordered. They found lethal levels of poison in Samuel's body. And finally, the mask cracked. Nanny confessed. With a grin on her face, she admitted to taking lives of 4 husbands, 2 children, her mother, her mother-in-law, her sister, and 2 grandchildren. 11 deaths, possibly more. She even joked during interrogations. She laughed when talking about her crimes. But the state of Oklahoma focused on just one murder, Samuel Doss, her final victim. That was enough. In May of 1955, Nanny pled guilty. The courtroom buzzed with reporters, but the judge didn't sentence her to death. Why? Because she was a woman. She was handed a life sentence and sent to the Oklahoma State Penitentiary. The other murders, never charged, never tried. The confessions remained chilling footnotes. Even behind bars, Nanny kept her signature grin. She joked with guards. She giggled with inmates. The press dubbed her the Giggling Granny, a name that stuck, a nickname that mocked the horror she caused. 10 years later, leukemia would become a reason for her passing. She died in 1965 in the hospital ward of the prison and was buried in Oak Hill Memorial Park in McAlester, Oklahoma. But even now, her legacy lingers, a grandmotherly face masking the soul of a killer. Because Nanny Doss didn't just murder for money, she murdered for convenience and laughed while doing it. Rose West. At first glance, Rosemary West looked like any ordinary British housewife, but behind closed doors, she was part of one of the most disturbing stories in UK history. Alongside her husband Fred West, Rose was responsible for the deaths of 10 young women over a span of 14 years. But the horror didn't stop there. One of their earliest victims was just a child, Fred's own daughter, Charmaine, only 8 years old. Most of their crimes took place in one house, a house that would later be called simply 25th Cromwell Street, the place where darkness lived. It started in 1969 when 15-year-old Rose met 27-year-old Fred West at a bus stop in Cheltenham. He was rough, unkempt, and far older. She was a teenager, still figuring out who she was. At first, she was put off by his appearance, but Fred was persistent. He kept showing up. He brought gifts, and eventually, he charmed her. Fred even convinced someone to deliver a present to Rose while she worked at a local bakery, just so he could swoop in afterward and ask her out again. That time, she said yes. Not long after, Rose was spending more and more time at Fred's caravan. helping him care for his two daughters from a previous relationship, Anne Marie and Charmaine. At first, she seemed caring, gentle even. She'd take the girls on walks to pick wildflowers, but the warmth wouldn't last. Rose quit her job to become a full-time nanny for the children. Fred gave her money each week so she could pretend she was still working, just to keep her parents in the dark. When Rose introduced Fred to her family, her parents were horrified. Her father even threatened to call social services. Rose's parents tried everything to stop the relationship. They contacted authorities. Rose was placed into care for troubled teens, but still found ways to sneak off and visit Fred. When she turned 16, she ran off, leaving home to live with him. Soon, she was pregnant. Fred was jailed for a short time, and while he was away, Rose was left alone with the kids. This is when things took a terrifying turn. According to Anne Marie, she and her sister Charmaine were subjected to frequent mistreatment. While Anne Marie tried to stay quiet and avoid conflict, Charmaine stood her ground. She didn't cry, she didn't break. She believed her mother would return for her. She held on to hope, but that defiance made her a target. One day, a neighbor's child walked into the West's flat unannounced. What she saw was chilling. Charmaine standing on a chair, hands tied behind her back. Rose stood next to her, holding a wooden spoon. Anne Marie was nearby, silent. Another time, hospital records show Charmaine had suffered a serious injury to her ankle. Rose claimed it was an accident, but nothing about this household was normal. By the summer of 1971, the world would never see Charmaine West again. Fred was still in jail, and Rose was left alone in their Gloucester flat with the children. One day, Charmaine simply disappeared. Rose told everyone the child had gone to live with her biological mother, Reina Costello. It was a convenient lie, one no one questioned too closely. But behind the facade, something horrific had happened. Charmaine had been killed, and when Fred returned from prison, he helped dispose of the little girl's body. She was buried beneath the kitchen floor of their previous home at 25th Midland Road. Years later, forensic investigators found her remains. The official report stated that her cause of death was blunt force trauma, and Reina, Charmaine's mother, would never get a chance to speak up. Fred murdered her too, not long after. With no one left to ask questions, the Wests moved to 25th Cromwell Street. It was supposed to be a fresh start. Instead, it became a graveyard for young women. Over the next decade, Fred and Rose lured young girls to the house. Some were runaways, others were picked up under the pretense of work or lodging. Once inside, there was no escape. The couple would torture, abuse, and kill their victims. Some of the girls were even kept alive for days, chained in the cellar before they were murdered and buried beneath the house. Among their victims was their own daughter, Heather West, who vanished in 1987 at the age of 16. Fred claimed she had gone to live abroad, but neighbors were suspicious, especially after Fred joked, "She's under the patio," when someone asked where she was. Years later, they'd learn that wasn't a joke, it was a confession. The House of Horrors was finally exposed in 1994 when one of their children spoke out to authorities. Investigators searched the home and uncovered the remains of 9 young women buried in the garden and cellar, including Heather West. Fred was arrested first. During interrogations, he confessed to the murders but claimed Rose had nothing to do with it. But when police dug deeper, they found Rose's fingerprints, her involvement, and most damning of all, survivors who spoke of her cruelty. The trial that followed gripped the nation. Fred never stood trial. He took his life in his cell on New Year's Day, 1995. Rose, however, showed no remorse. She pled not guilty to everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. In November of the same year, Rose West was convicted of 10 counts of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment with a recommendation that she never be released. She became one of just a handful of women in British history to receive a whole life tariff, meaning she will die in prison. Today, she resides at HM Prison New Hall, isolated from most inmates, known to them simply as the monster of Cromwell Street. She spends her days knitting, reading, and watching TV, as if her past didn't exist, but for the victims, for their families, and for a country still haunted by what was found in that house. The nightmare of Rose West has never ended. Belle Gunness, Hell's Belle. She was strong, silent, mysterious, and behind her cold stare was one of the deadliest women the world has ever known. Born Brynhild Paulsdatter Sturseth in Norway, 1859, she arrived in America as Belle Gunness, determined to reinvent herself, and she did, as a wife, mother, farmer, and killer. From 1884 to 1908, Belle Gunness carved out a life in the American Midwest, filled with secrets, insurance payouts, and shallow graves. They called her Hell's Belle, but even that nickname didn't capture the full horror of what she did. Her first husband, Mads Sorensen, died on a day when both of his life insurance policies overlapped. Belle claimed it was a simple headache. She gave him some powder. Moments later, he was dead. No one asked too many questions. And Belle? She collected $5,000 and moved on. Her 2 infant children had also died mysteriously before that, both insured, both uninvestigated. Next came husband number 2, Peter Gunness. He didn't last long. Belle said a meat grinder fell from a shelf and crushed his skull. No one believed it. The coroner suspected murder, but again, Belle walked away with another life insurance check. The deaths piled up. So did the cash. And then Belle changed her strategy. By 1905, Belle was placing marriage ads in newspapers. She promised land, love, and a prosperous life in La Porte, Indiana. Lonely bachelors responded from all over the country, men with savings, men who thought they'd found their new beginning. What they didn't know was that Belle had already dug their graves. One by one they arrived, wrote letters home saying they were happy. Then, silence. The letters stopped. The men vanished. Belle always had an explanation. They ran off with traders. They went west. Or they changed their minds. But she kept their trunks, their coats. Their names disappeared, but their belongings stayed behind. It all came crashing down in April 1908, when Belle's farmhouse burned to the ground. In the ashes, police found the body of an adult woman and the remains of 3 children. Everyone assumed Belle had died in the fire, but one man wasn't convinced. Aksel Helgelian had been looking for his brother Andrew, who had gone to La Porte after corresponding with Belle. Aksel found the letters, pleased to bring money and not tell anyone. He went to the ruined farm and noticed something strange. Soft patches of dirt near the pig pen. He dug, and what he found was not just Andrew. It was a nightmare beneath the soil. But Belle Gunness hadn't acted alone. Behind the horrors of her Indiana murder farm lurked a man, Ray Lamphere, her handyman, occasional lover, and eventually her scapegoat. When her farmhouse burned to the ground in 1908, taking lives of 3 children and revealing a headless woman thought to be Belle's, Lamphere was arrested and convicted of arson. But the truth he carried was far darker than anyone imagined. In his confession, Lamphere revealed the blueprint of Belle's madness. She had lured men through Lonely Heart ads, wealthy, desperate bachelors who believed they were coming to marry her. One by one, they arrived at her secluded property, and one by one, they vanished, buried in shallow graves beneath the pig pen. Their only mistake was trusting the Black Widow of the Midwest. Lamphere claimed Belle herself ordered him to burn the house to the ground, with her own children inside. And the woman found headless in the basement? Not Belle. just another victim used as a decoy while Bell vanished into the night. Lamphere's confession, made to Reverend Edwin Schell in prison, was so disturbing that the Reverend locked it in his safe for years. But rumors swirled. Journalists got wind of it. And when the truth finally came out, it rocked the nation, sparking fresh investigations, arrests, and even more questions. The most chilling part was that the doctor who examined the corpse found in the fire testified that the body was too short, too slim to be Bell, and the head never recovered. No one could say for certain whether Belle Gunness died in that blaze or escaped to kill again. Whispers of Bell sightings echoed for years across Chicago and beyond, but nothing was ever proven. Meanwhile, her former farm became a grisly tourist trap, a museum of corpses. Souvenir stands popped up beside mass graves. Children pointed to bone fragments. Strangers took pieces of the soil where so many had perished. Belle Gunness became a legend, a monster, a mystery. Even death couldn't pin her down. Locked behind concrete walls, their reign of terror may be over, but the horrors they unleashed still echo through time. What turns a woman into a merciless killer? Is it madness, manipulation, or something much darker that society refuses to see? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you've made it this far, be sure to check out this next video. I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you once again for watching.